I'm your host, Ann Kelly. We have two guests with us today, Greg Robertson, who is a stone sculptor, and
Hello.
it is Greg's first time on the show. And for anybody who saw our first show, we've got Michael Kirchoff back. He's going to
Hello.
participate in the conversation. I'm in my backyard. I happen to have one of Greg's pieces right behind me. Say hi, Greg.
Hello. How are you people?
So where are you today, Greg?
I am at my studio in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
And Michael?
I'm in my office in Los Angeles, California.
So for anybody who missed the first episode and didn't get to meet Michael yet, he's a fine art photographer, commercial photographer, and is also involved in multiple photography related magazines, some that involve interviews. And we had so much fun on the first show, we thought, let's bring him back.
Without glitches this time.
Well, we'll say that when that's over. And then Greg, I've known Greg about 20.
Since before the hills were formed.
I've known Greg forever. So
Long time.
what have you been up to recently, Greg?
I've been carving rocks. Myself and my team that work here at the studio we're in the Siler Arts District now. So we're just like up the street from Meow Wolf, right? But there's been tons of artists in this neighborhood forever. So it wasn't an art district before, but now it's cool. So, and I've been here for about 14 years in this space. There's Rufina State Buildings for those of you that live in Santa Fe. And it's a nice big space, a lot of garage space and piles of rock. As you can see, we've been working on a really big project over the last couple of weeks, or over the last several months, actually. That's here in Santa Fe, which is a big commissioned fountain project with 10-foot basins that we built, and 3 large stones per basin. And you can, if you want to show those Instagram stories, this is what we've been finishing off. And so I guess it should be said, I'm a sculptor. I'm a stone sculptor. I primarily make water features and fountains. So fountains have been the main jam for 20 years. So you can see there, that's a 10-foot basin that we built. And those are 3 Arizona onyx stones. The tallest one is 5 feet, 5 feet, 4 feet, 3 feet. And this is in the tail end of the build where the stones are in place already. They'll be covered with pebbles. There's beautiful Santa Fe mountains there. And there we're starting to cover them with pebbles. So, yeah, nice project. And so these are these pieces. These are all right. Race cars.
Was that at your studio or in the story?
No, it's at the studio. Yeah, all kinds of excitement around here in the Siler Arts District. Yeah. So those pieces are more polished. Just basic polished stones. I mean, everything's hand carved and hand polished, and attention to detail everywhere. But those aren't art necessarily. We get into a big conversation about what is art, and if a sculpted form is changed somehow, does that make it sculpture? Some people would say yes. I personally don't look at those as sculpture, because we make a lot of them. My crew and I, we make a lot of those, travel and sell them at fine art shows. But we also make much more intricate work, which I think has much more intent as far as design. With the standing onyx pieces, it's kind of like nature is the design. Nature is the best thing about those. It's like, oh, I'm taking a piece of nature and making it functional and putting some really nice attention to detail into it. But it really kind of stands on its own. No pun intended. I make standing stones.
I have a question though.
Sure.
So what is then the difference between what you're considering your art and what you consider your, I guess then, is it commercial work in a sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Is it because that there's less of like the artist's hand involved with the with each piece? Is it there's less art, or
it's more of just kind of what I mentioned about an intentional design. So for example, these here, let's show you the onyx ones like you just saw in that basin, right? So these are all really dusty, but those are all just, you know, basic onyx fountains. And they're all one of a kind. Like every single stone is different, right? Not one has ever been exactly the same. So they're all unique. But like that one has a hole in it. So, you know, that hole was intentional to get some sort of thing. Now that's really simple. You know, here's another piece that I started working on, that on the Instagram and the Facebook, there's finished product of those designs. But to answer your question, Michael, I think it's really you're trying to tell some sort of story with it, or you know, you're just trying to get some sort of visual reaction out of it that's I don't know, more intellectual or more emotional than just getting a reaction out of a pretty stone.
Oh, I was going to say, when I first
Yeah, if
met
you want to,
you were just doing sculptures, and the water element didn't really come until after we met.
yeah, that's true. Like for the first 10 years of my career, which was, you know, basically around 1999, 2000, when I really started making work and not being successful at it commercially, but really paying attention to series of work and design and just form. That was all granite. There was 10 years of taking recycled countertops and making sculpture out of those. For examples of that, this is all, you know, this is all hand carved granite, but they're laminations. They used to be countertops. So we actually like glued them together because I didn't have blocks of stone. I had slabs of stone. So I had to create thickness and do polish and rough work. And so, yeah, you're right, Ann. These were always sort of meant to be sculptures, but they're also fountains. But the visual of it was the most important part, for sure. So, but now it's, you know, I don't know, we could get into a big conversation about commercial art and is it art, and
Well, sometimes they kind of intersect. Like,
well, if I think if you're a professional artist, they have to. There has to be, unless you're able to sell $250,000 pieces and make 5 pieces a year, you know, and hey, there's plenty of artists that can do that. But if you're making a serious living at it, there has to be some mode of production. And you know, like, so I do, not in COVID land now, but you know, I've been making my living doing shows, mostly in Texas, Colorado, Arizona. Travel, and it was basically like being in a band, but I had all these rocks and a crane truck, and you know, and so we would set up all these shows and sell a lot of work and do all our own installs and do all that, and I mean, it was definitely a hustle, but it was very successful. And so that's kind of where the more standard onyx pieces come from, because not everybody can afford you know, $15,000 stone sculpture that I make, but they can, you know, afford like a $5,000 sculpture, which, you know, 4 foot tall rock, you know, installed for them, for people with expendable income, that's, you know, that's pretty fair. And so, you know, if I was going to sell the more expensive work, I had to make the less expensive work to basically finance the whole operation. What artists don't think about if you have a production studio or something like that, is payroll, liability insurance, blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's just like a lot of money. It's overhead. It's running a business. And so it reminds me of a story that one time I was at a show, and this is kind of early on, you know, 10 years ago. That's 2010. That's when I really started doing shows full time. And this guy was in Arizona, and this guy walks and he likes looking at the work, and he looks at me and he's like, "Nice product." And like, and I thought in my head, I was like, "Product? Like this?
How dare you?
This isn't product, man. This is art, man. You know." But it is a product, really, at the end of the day, and the talent of art is applied to it. And so, you know,
a lot of those lines are just kind of blurry. Knowing you as long as I have, I've kind of watched your style and your career develop, and I don't know that it is necessarily that it's commercial work, but you've actually found a way to make a living and support yourself off of your art.
Yeah, absolutely. And I try, and I think the important thing with any artist is, if you're going to be constantly producing work, well, the first thing is you have to constantly produce work. Mm-hmm. You can't make some work and then just be like, "Hey, check it out, everybody." You have to like be constantly producing work, and producing different work, and trying to really push your own boundaries, and making stuff that people might not necessarily like, but also paying close attention to just good design, and always just, you know, just trying to do new stuff. I'll take designs and I'll replicate designs in different pieces, but I'll tweak them and change them and combine them with other designs, and, you know, and so every piece in that sense is totally unique. And I look at those works. I mean, if you look at the sculpture page of the website, you know, you'll see, you know, a whole bunch of different series of works. And, you know, a certain series of work will be fairly similar. And then another series of work will be completely different. So anyway, the point of all that rabble is, you know, I think it's okay to be a production studio, but as an artist, you do always have to keep doing new stuff and just try.
And you even have fountains that match dogs.
Yeah, that isn't that absolutely adorable? Yeah, if you go up, and is that my Instagram or?
Yes.
See, so these have been a lot of the recent designs over the past year and a half, probably, really experimenting with all these holes in the stone. And I don't know if you can tell from the video, but the face of the stone is actually sculpted and carved and shaped, and that flat plane is taken away.
Yeah, that's stunning. How long does something like that take?
My official answer, let's see, I've been an artist for 20 years, so the official answer is 20 years and a day.
That is a good answer.
That's how you got to look at it.
Yeah.
But well, I mean, it definitely takes a minute. We're cutting pieces out of slabs. I'm going to the quarry and getting all this stone in ginormous boulder form.
Can we see the crane truck?
Yeah, totally.
Well,
And
is
so
all of your work, or I'm sorry, is all of the stone sourced nearby?
yeah, most of it is out of Arizona, at a quarry in Arizona, an onyx quarry. And then then these are big old pieces of petrified wood. There's my foot-long boot. You can kind of get a scope of those tree stumps. So I'm getting those in Arizona. And then there's more like beigey travertine that I get out of a New Mexico quarry. So New Mexico, Arizona
Okay.
is where it's all coming. There's the crane truck, Ann.
Yes. So
Have you seen that? Have you seen the new crane truck, Ann?
only on Instagram. So
Yeah, it's
I'm gonna come
handy.
soon. But you've had a few crane trucks, like as you've been advancing.
I had one.
The crane trucks.
Yeah, I had one other one that got us through a long way, but it died. It died. So yeah, so we're getting all that stone, and then we're having it wire cut into slabs, you know, and then we're cutting the slabs down. So, and even all these pieces, I mean, you know, you can kind of see how big that is compared to my foot. These are very small pieces compared to what the slabs are. So because of that, we can make, you know, 6 foot, 8 foot sculptures. So
I imagine you're working on more than one at any given time then, probably several, right?
Oh yeah. We're always working on multiple projects. This project that we're working on right now, we're actually on site up there, and we've been on site all this week and last week. So that's been kind of like taken out of the studio time because me and the whole crew are there. But once we're almost done with that, we'll come back and jump back in, and we have some installations to do around Santa Fe, just some like for little single pieces. We're busy.
And
Nice.
how great to have that project. I mean, all three of us are used to traveling pretty regularly, so this is definitely
and
just being weird. Just not traveling is weird for all three of us.
right, and this is the thing with art too. I mean, like, you know, that was a client that I talked to 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And 3 years ago, he wanted the work, but he just wasn't ready for it. And, you know, and obviously it's 6 pieces in these 10-foot basins. I mean, it's, you know, everything was custom about that project. But he came along 3 years later and was like, okay, I'm ready. and that's really an important part of, I think, being a long-term artist as well, is it's not about just like, you know, producing sales just that are in front of you. You know, you have to sow a lot of seeds.
Mm-hmm.
It's a relationship, right?
Absolutely. Oh yeah. You have relationships with every client you have, you know, and 99.9 of them are awesome.
Yeah. So I'm wondering then also, with the work that you consider to be more art, I mean, and then honestly, it's really in your general practice as well, but inspiration has to come into play at some point. Where is that coming from?
Well, if you look at the scope of my work, a lot of it is definitely naturally inspired forms. I think just the general look of softness is a constant through my work. You know, I like all my soft edges. However, oh look, let's see, go back down, Ann. Or I'm sorry, up. There was one that I just did for the hospital. And so, okay, so that one on the right. Yeah, that one. This piece was, well, this one's soft on the outer edges, but the actual design is very intentional.
Oh, wow.
And based on their logo, and very intricate in all the carving. So all those lines are all hand carved, and the negative space is chiseled out, so there's dimension to it. And it's hard to see on here, but that is sort of a whole interwoven design. Their logo design was a basket Like you see it at the very beginning of the video, and so they wanted something that reflected their logo, but they didn't, you know, they wanted something totally original. And so in that instance, the inspiration was the logo. They're like, okay, we want you to tie this in. And so just as a designer, you're like, okay, you know, and then what kind of art am I going to add to that? So what that company is they basically own the hospital, Ancorum, and they're like a community outreach portion of the hospital. So that design was very much influenced on Southwest art, you know, Native American art, of course, and just the Southwest in general. And going for the idea of a basket and the interwovenness of the community. So, I mean, that design had a very sort of literal meaning for me. But other designs, really, a lot of it depends on the stone, and you know what the stone's doing and the dimensions of the stone. Now, these pieces are fun, Anne. So the inspiration for these pieces, these bronzes on top are made by our wonderful friend Yenny Koch here in Santa Fe. And so I've made a bunch of these pieces with her bronze people sitting on top. That design, that there's a whole like path carved around that column. So, and that's ending up at their feet. So that one's that's pretty literal, right? It's their passageway through life, or their beautiful journey. And they have arrived at this vantage point where they are sitting together in love. You know, it's so, you know, that again, that's a very literal sort of artistic endeavor. But a lot of the other pieces, like the ones with the holes, I'm not sure that I know what they mean. I'm not sure what the exact inspiration is. Like a lot of it is just like playing with it and seeing, just experimenting with form, you
Well, don't
know.
you think
And
a
then,
lot of art making is just being curious and experimenting and, oh, what happens if I do this thing? And
oh, of
maybe
course,
in
yeah.
5 years, you're like, I figured out what the whole means. And, and there's,
Yeah, oh yeah, totally.
you just,
Yeah, sometimes, but I think sometimes also you have to be you have to have intent, you know. Again, like I was talking about before, there has to be some sort of intent, I think, in a direction. And I think that's what sets a lot of art apart from other art, is the or the perceived intent, maybe.
yeah, well, or a mixture of things. Like there are pieces that are commission pieces that you've done, like the one for the
Yeah.
hospital, and then there's other pieces that you make because you want to make and you believe you can make them and take them on the road, and that hopefully someone will take one home with them.
Right,
So it's like
right.
I'm just gonna look at the stone and see and just feel out what I feel like it should look like. Versus,
Yeah. The piece with the columns and the balls in the center, heavens, is what that piece is called. That was a whole collaboration with the client, because I had made, I don't know, 15 years ago or something, had made a sort of a small version of that, 2 pieces of stone with a ball in the center, stone ball, hand carved ball. And so she saw that and she said, that's my favorite one. Yeah, that one. I don't know if you can.
can you see it now?
Yeah, the Instagram video is October 14th.
Well, there's the still on
But
Greg's Facebook page. So you can follow Greg on Facebook and Instagram, and you're seeing the pages here.
that's correct. That's correct. So that piece was, she gave me a direction to go. She was like, I want this sort of direction. And then basically I came up with a design and ran it by her. Okay, so right there, it's right there to the left.
Ah, there we go.
And that one, just the water is flowing out of both stone sculpture.
Sorry, I clicked on hashtag stone sculpture.
Yeah. The water's coming out of both columns.
I
So,
love
but we,
the feeling that those balls are just going to fall at any given point. But knowing you
yeah.
and your artistry, I know they're not.
Oh no, that is there's some real architecture in that piece, and infrastructure, and we had to take the forklift to the client's house to install that. So yeah, so that inspiration, that was a really nice combination of the client and me,
I love
coming
that.
up with something.
I love that aspect of what you do too, because it's like you say, it's not necessarily inspiration, but there's a collaborative element to it,
Yeah.
and like there's a relationship with your client. It's not just a relationship. You're collaborating with them, and honestly, and also with like the piece that we saw earlier with the seated figures at the top of the fountain. You're collaborating also with other artists, which I think is a really
Yes.
great aspect to what it is that you're doing.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, and that's really fun to do that, because every artist gets in this mode of where they're kind of stuck, or they're like, oh, I've done that so much and I'm sick of doing that, and and all kinds of different things, and it's nice to have someone give you a direction.
It's like we're all collaborating now. It's fun. The history of sculpting stone goes back so far, so much further than photography. And I was geeking out last night on the history of stone fountains, and they date back to 2000 BC or earlier, some people believe. So, I mean, there's so much history behind this medium. It's pretty just mind-blowing to think about. And
oh, it totally is. They didn't have any they didn't have electricity, man. I mean, that's
exactly.
The Romans would cut giant slabs with basically a big wire, and they basically rigged up this wire where the wire would be moving across the slab, and they would have a guy sit there and put sand in the little groove that the wire was cutting in the stone, big old pieces of marble. And marble is like a semi-soft stone. It's not granite. It's not super, super hard. But just the time that took, and the dude just sitting there all day, throwing.
You've got it easy with your power tools, your fancy power tools.
Oh, it's so easy breezy. It's a piece of cake.
So that makes me think of something that I think the three of us can all appreciate is there's this whole thing ongoing in any art form, analog versus digital. But what I was thinking about the other night is, in the case of your work, it's kind of somewhere in between, because you're not using AutoCAD or anything like that. So it's not digital, but you're also not carving with a piece of sand or a butter knife or something like that. So you're like kind of somewhere in between.
Right.
More advanced tools, but
right. It's still a manual operation in order to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. However, I don't know. Do you remember that show, Ann, many years ago at Site Santa Fe with Barry X Ball, that made all those onyx heads?
I don't know if I caught that.
You remember that? It was years and years ago. And so this dude wasn't even and I think about this story a lot. He wasn't even really a stone carver. He was an artist, but he took all these pieces of onyx that were very, very delicate. They couldn't be worked with hand tools because they would break. But what he did is he took photographs of famous people, because he was also a photographer, and then he put them in the computer and he elongated their faces and he tweaked them out, right? And then he took those images to a CNC machine, which is a three-dimensional machine that can cut three-dimensional forms, right? And the really advanced ones can carve out anything. And so then he had these images carved out of this very delicate onyx with and he added all kinds of little details, little icons all over their heads, and it was like trippy work, but it was brilliant. It was amazing. And you know, that right there, he created these stone sculptures. Is he a stone sculptor? Well, now technically he is, I guess. He didn't touch it, but he created it with this, you know, $500,000 machine and some really good ideas. So, you know, I don't know, that always threw me for a loop as far as making art, because I think a lot of people, they get into this construct that like art needs to be like really, really pure, and it has to be, you know, if you're going to be a master in some sort of medium, you dedicate your whole life to that medium, and that's all you do. And I've actually never been that kind of artist. I mean, I play music and sing and write songs and always messed with photography and just made sculpture out of whatever. And it kind of just so happened that stone, and my degree is in tech theater and design, so I was a whole theater guy. I didn't even plan all this mess, you know, but you know, this is how it ended up. So now I'm a stone artist as well. So
with a theater degree.
Yeah, I say if you're an artist, you can, as long as you're always going forward in design and producing work and just doing stuff, I think that makes you more of an artist than anything.
Well,
Right.
it was your theater path that led you to go to school. Where did you go to school?
I went to school in Portales, New Mexico, eastern New Mexico.
You went overseas, or not overseas. Blech.
Oh, when I went on exchange in
Yes, when you
England,
went on
which
exchange.
is
Wrong word.
yeah, I turned 21 in England. That was a
Yeah.
hoot. And I was an ex-Smith on the southern coast, little tiny town, and I had a pub on the campus, and I was like, this is sweet. I like the Brits.
And then you talked about going to Italy and seeing architecture and sculptures there, and that.
I did, yeah. I did a trip. We did a whole trip through Rome and Florence and Venice for a short time, and but yeah, just all the sculpture and architecture in general in Italy really blew me away. And I wasn't really in. You know, looking back, I wasn't really in a mindset to truly appreciate all of that, but it had such a profound impact on me. And
the pubs were there.
well, I mean, I did appreciate it all, but I mean, what I'm saying is if I went there now and just really, you know, pondered the amount of time and you know, just all of it, all the design. In all of those sculptures and architecture, I mean, it's mind-bending. And so, but I mean, as a 21-year-old, it was mind-bending as well, and it definitely changed me. It inspired me.
Yeah, I would think that all of the years between then and now, in some way, kind of inform your art and how you go about it. And like you mentioned, creating with intention. Sometimes we don't always know where that intention is sourced from. It's somewhere probably from our past. And like you've already mentioned that everything from international travel to theater to music, they all intersect at a certain point. And it seems to me that they're intersecting in the work that you're doing right now.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And what's funny is that that's kind of like automatic in a lot of ways, because, I'm on a schedule all the time. It's, it's so unromantic as far as
Right.
like being an artist, but yeah, uh, but my thought process as far as like what I'm wanting to do next, yeah, that's always being pulled from past designs and past experiences, and hanging out with Anne at the Cowgirl
Mhm.
on random Thursdays and crazy conversations we'd have about whatever, and Snow. Anne, I think both Anne and I are very
Snow.
influenced by
Mhm.
sliding on snow
We will do it again soon.
with various shaped devices.
Yes. So that one time we were at the Cowgirl and you were talking to that woman and she said, "Oh, you're an artist. Oh, that's so romantic." And because there's a really romanticized notion of being an artist, and you, I mean, and it's
I was
true.
like, no.
And how blessed are, how blessed are any of us to work in the arts? But you were
Yeah.
also kind of laughing and thinking, okay, you have no idea how heavy the stone is, or what it's like to go to the shows, or what it's like
Yeah.
in stone, covered in stone dust, all of those things.
Yeah. I'm like, Stone's dumb. Why would smart people don't do that?
In your next life, you'll work with styrofoam. It's
I
much.
will. I will. No, some of the stone carvers I know, God, they're such brilliant, amazing people.
Mhm.
So, but I always question my own sanity. That's for sure.
Well, don't we
But
all?
yeah, I do remember that. And so, I think any artist that really has some sort of thing going, they know that, it's work. It's good work. It's busy work. It's dedicated work.
Doesn't always feel like work. Sometimes
Yeah,
when
you
it's like,
know.
and
Michael, do you still are you so you've done a lot of amazing photography that I was looking at, a lot of architecture and awesome stuff. Do you still pursue photography full time, or do you even have time to a whole
Well,
magazine?
yeah, right now I kind of juggle a lot of different things, which is easier now because of the pandemic situation we're in. So some of the things that I would normally be doing, I'm doing either much less of or not at all.
Uh,
Um, but because I do so many things, whatever I'm not doing will be made up with the other things that I am doing. I'm always able to kind of, you know, I don't sit around. I can
yeah.
procrastinate, but I don't just sit around all day and watch
That's right.
movies or anything like
Totally.
that. It's not possible. Plus, I love coffee, and that's always got it keeping me jumpy. Uh,
I love that. And you photographed in Italy
Yeah.
multiple times, so it's very likely that you and Greg have visited a lot of the same monuments
well,
and sculptures, and
probably so. Yeah,
maybe even at
yeah.
the same time. Who knows?
Could have been. Yeah. I mean, I do. I have distinct memories of walking the streets of Rome, taking photographs, and
Yeah.
when you're at a place, especially a place that's as impressive and immense as Rome, I don't think that you can help but be inspired in some way by it. And those memories are things that you'll hold on to for the rest of your life. So the fine artwork allows me the time to kind of think through and develop like you mentioned, Greg, again, the attention, like you have to develop that. So um, slowing down and doing things film based will allow that. And I think that there's a lot of value in that. And when I actively am photographing, if I shoot a lot and I have a lot to process, I won't look at it right away. In fact, I'll usually set it aside for days, weeks, sometimes months before I even look at it again. And then I kind of see it with fresh eyes, because I think it's important to look at it objectively and kind of, if I can take myself away from the moment of when I took those images, I think that in the long run it helps me, especially when it comes time to edit the images, because, you know,
Well, you see it more of how another viewer is going to see it. You take your own story that you created in your head when you took the photograph
yeah,
away
exactly.
a little bit,
Yeah,
and then you're able to see what story it's actually telling, with someone else looking at it.
right. Yeah, their ideas behind the image are far different than mine. I mean, I have everything. I have sights, sounds, and smells that occurred when I took that photograph that are very difficult to let go of. So
Yeah.
sometimes there will be an image that I hold very, very dearly, and nobody else could give a shit about.
Right.
So,
Right.
so,
Right.
and I think that there could be similar. There's probably a similar idea there in terms of what you do too. Like you're working on several projects at a time. You can't do them all simultaneously. So you kind of have to go from place to place. And sometimes you kind of, you'll circle back to where you started on a project, and you'll think,
Totally.
oh, well, maybe,
Oh,
oh,
that's such a great thing to do sometimes, is especially if you're trying to flesh out some sort of idea, and I'm not exactly, I maybe have a general sense of direction that I want to go with it, but a lot of times a lot of my designs, I draw them out on the stone, right? So they're drawn out in pencil, and so a lot of times I'll have to draw it out, and I put that aside, and just like you said, I'll come back to it in a couple days or a week or whatever, and really look at it, and try to see if that's proportionally, if it's correct, and if it's really kind of coming across with what I want, and sometimes it won't. I'm like, just erase the whole thing, and then come back to it. So yeah, that's and it's nice to be busy with enough projects that you can allow yourself to do that.
yeah, yeah,
Because you just get stuck sometimes. You're like, I don't know, I'm trying too hard, or whatever.
sure. Yeah, I think that that's a fascinating aspect about artists and the creative process.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't I don't know how it works necessarily. There's a lot of artists that are far more organized than me with their creative process, I suppose, but I don't know. I can't. My problem is I have a hard time figuring out which direction I want to go, because I want to go in a bunch of different directions. I want to produce a whole bunch of different sort of designs, and I try not to do that. I try to stay somewhat consistent so I can flesh out work and then go to another idea. But sometimes it'll I don't have enough time to produce all that work anyway. I have all these ideas, and I'm like, oh well, okay, well, yeah, I really want to make that, but I should probably do one like this. That's always interesting. So
From an
Yeah,
artistic
it's a
perspective,
good problem.
you seem relatively organized. You've got kind of different
I'm
styles.
pretty, yeah, that's the theater stage managing part.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was a performer, and then my degree ended up being in tech theater and design. So I could be a director, really, was the whole point of that. Because when I went to England the first time on exchange, I went after I graduated and worked in theater in London before I moved to Santa Fe. But I went to England. That's when I turned 21, and produced a show that I had written and directed it, light designed it, had original music composed for it, had a dancer like choreograph a whole dance piece for it. It was called A Circle of Friends. It was one central character, and it had all these people that had influenced him through his life, but none of them spoke. He was the only one that had lines. So that was a really cool show. And so when I came back to the States, I wanted to be a director, and went into the tech theater side of it. And you know, and stage managing is just like running a house. You keep schedules, you keep a bunch of wacky actors like on top of their shit, and that whole life is running this business. That's what this business is. There was the shows, which was the performance, and then you get to show off the work that you've created, and it's like, ta-da! But then, you know, you got to make it work. You got to run a business. You know, you can't just be like half organized. That doesn't fly. You know, you gotta be organized. But I like what you said, Michael, about how you procrastinate, but you procrastinate, but you don't sit around.
Right.
That's so true, because I procrastinate on all kinds of stuff. Like, I'm like, I'm not going to do that right now. There's
but you
something
get it
else.
done when it needs to be done.
Eventually. Yeah. Eventually. Deadlines are good. You know, deadlines are
Yes.
good for me, right?
Yeah.
I hit deadlines pretty much all the time, but yeah, but if there's no deadline, it might not get done.
So some of these digital fountains I was reading about last night, kind of
Digital fountains.
They're like
What?
they're
Ah.
related to, no, it's crazy. So they're kind of related to theater in a sense. Like,
Oh.
it would all be whoa, where are you going?
Whoa.
So basically you could have fountains that are all controlled by a computer, and there's like light and there's music, and you know, like the type of thing they'd have at Disneyland or something like that. So
Oh yeah, like more performance based.
yeah, so that's like your full on digital.
That's probably what I need to
Which is
be
something I
doing.
hadn't thought about. I mean, maybe that's, you know, where
Yeah,
your
totally.
theater degree eventually comes full swing. I don't know. It's
It might. It might, you know.
To the extent I had really thought about digital sculpture, is I had the honor of getting to go to the Sagrada La Familia in Barcelona a number of years ago, and it's not finished. They've been building it for, I don't have my facts down. They've been building it forever. But one of the coolest things about the tour is, as you walk around it, one side of it is, and don't quote me on this, but one side, it looks like it's literally hand carved. And as you round the building, the technology changes, and they're still not done, but the most recent work is all AutoCAD. So it's all one structure, one design, and it's a combination of all those things, and just how cool is that? So
cool.
Yeah, it's kind of mind blowing. I was saying, I had my buddy Zach on the last show, and we were talking about, he's a DJ, and Greg knows Zach. We all used to work together, actually. Yep. And we were just looking at some kind of the crazy histories of DJing, and I was saying, not that I'm old, but the older I get, the more fascinating history is. It's
yeah.
Who was interested in that when we were in high school? I mean, maybe it was the way it was taught. But I'm looking at the history of fountains last night, and I was like, oh yeah, Sumeria. You know, that's where these early fountains were. So
Sumeria.
That's history is actually pretty interesting. Maybe just when you're looking at the right things.
Sure, and just the idea of manipulating water is, you know, that's from the first time that human forms found water. I'm sure they started trying to figure out how to make it travel and make it, you know, work for them in some sort of way.
Yeah, what they did, like all the first fountains were connected to aqueducts, and they were functional. They were water fountains. They wanted, people needed to get to the water, and it wasn't until later that they became, you know, maybe dedicated to kings or gods, but you know, they were all over the place, and stone has just always been this really.
And what's amazing about water too, and gravity, it's really gravity.
Yeah,
like water doesn't like do what you want it to do necessarily. You know, I mean, that's just a natural component of it. So you're trying to make this liquid do things, and gravity is making it do things. And you know, humans have found all kinds of amazing ways to control it. But when you're just creating designs as it's simply falling, it's just falling.
You've got to
And
factor that into your design, don't you?
of course. Oh yeah, of course. Into every single piece that's ever been made in this studio, that idea was applied in some sort of way. The flow is always been the important part. The rate of the flow, the splash, the non-splash, the sound, all of it. And really what I'm referring to is like a lot of the like geometric designs and stuff that I've done with lines and stuff like that. You know, if a stone is a really like weird shape and you want the water to go a certain way, it doesn't necessarily go that way, you know, unless you actually carve an aqueduct into the stone and make it go over here. But it can be really difficult to make it go a certain direction because it wants to go straight down. That's what it's going to do. So, you know, that's a lot of the design is let it go straight down. You know, how is it going to go straight down? What's it going to do when it goes, you know, straight down and hit the bottom? Like, you know, all those aspects.
But from the engineering standpoint, all of your pieces are in basins, so the water recycles itself. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Water flying halfway across the patio and
no, of course not. That's bad design. Yeah, you gotta like, yeah, you have to, exactly. You have to make it so that it's going to fit in the space that you're putting it in, you know.
So if you think about it, you are essentially still directing.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, like theater directing.
Yeah,
yep.
You're directing water through the force of gravity.
That's right. That's right.
Some things we can't help but do or not do.
Well, some things we can't help but do. Very profound, Miss Kelly.
So, a little off the subject, but I mentioned this earlier. The story of you getting fired from the restaurant that we worked at actually really inspired your artistic career.
It did. What happened? That was at the Blue Corn. Are we allowed to say that in our?
I think
so.
Zoom? I don't know.
We are the Blue Corn.
Sorry, JP.
That's the only job I've ever been fired from in my life. Since I'm the boss, I fire myself all the time, but then I have to come back.
That's fine.
And so that was the only job I was ever fired from, and management had changed, and they didn't like us old school people that knew how to run the show. And I chased a kid out of the door because he didn't tip me.
Mm-hmm. Well, not cool.
I didn't chase him. I just went out there and was like, hey, you know, you didn't tip me, right? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, you know, and then his mom called. And his mom was in the service industry, right?
Oh,
and she was like, yeah, the mom was in the service, and she was like, I can't believe blah, 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 blah. And so we were like, well, if you're in the service industry and your kid doesn't leave a tip, like, would you not be totally pissed off about that? Like, would you not be schooling your kid? But anyway, like, so I think it was a big conspiracy.
Yes, I think so.
But so I got fired, and that job sucked anyway. So I was doing an installation for our friend Kat's massage studio, and I had made this big, like, 7-foot tall granite water wall. This is the old work, right, out of the countertops and stuff, and made this really cool, like, and it had like sculpted trees out of green granite on this brown granite. It was all 3-dimensional. It was awesome. I never even got a picture of it. And it was on my trailer, and the guy in the like office next door to her massage studio. He was this builder guy, and he was like, "That's badass," and I'm like, "Thanks." And he's like, "How much you want for it?" And I was like, I don't know, I told him a price, and he's like, "Cool. Well, will you bring it to my house then tomorrow?" And I was like, "Yeah." And so that kind of like kicked off.
You wouldn't have been there. You would have been at work. None of that would have.
I would have been at work. I would have been at work. That's
That's
exactly right.
So
that's exactly right. And instead I wanted to go finish this installation. And that was, at the time, that was a significant amount of money. And so that was cool. Yeah, that kind of kicked off that kicked me off to like sort of invest in some stuff and really try to get it going, for real. And it definitely took a minute after that, but it did eventually.
But it was inspiring.
Oh yes. Yeah. That's a funny story.
So sometimes you're just supposed to get fired.
Sometimes you just really need to get fired because you're too dumb to quit, and you're like, oh no, I better be. See, I always had really good work ethic, so like.
Well, and there were really cool people that worked there.
There were amazing people, yeah. So we could put up with a fair amount of bullshit and still like be happy.
Exactly. And where we are now started there, and one thing led to another thing, and
that's right. That's right.
So I asked Michael this in the first show. I asked him if there's anything interesting that he collects. And I know you have a small art collection and you've got some musical instruments. Is there anything you collect that I don't know
those two things are probably, I definitely have a lot of art. I have more art than I could hang. And because I have spent the last decade doing art shows and have met just phenomenal artists, people that blow me away, and I've known them for years, and I just watch their work get better and better and better. It's so inspiring and amazing to witness. And so I've purchased a lot of and traded, been lucky enough to trade sometimes some nice big canvases, and so I have a lot of art, and and they all have stories, I think, like they should when you're collecting art. And a lot of musical instruments. But let's see, what do I collect? My house isn't very big, so I actually have gotten really good at like downsizing and not collecting things, because I don't want the clutter, right? Like, I want a big house to hang all my art, but I want a little house so I don't fill it with stuff. So, I don't know, Anne. You stumped me on that one.
You've got a nice little collection of musical instruments.
I do, all kinds of guitars and noise makers and drums from around the world, and stuff like that, and stories. We collect stories.
Yes, we do collect stories. I love collecting.
Yes, I have a 10-year-old, so I collect all kinds of stories.
And you've got some cool tools in your shop, which you use to make your art.
I do. It's fun. I have a diamond chainsaw. That's really cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
Did you know they made a chainsaw with diamond blades on it? It's cool.
That's gotta be expensive.
Yeah, it's stupid expensive.
Probably more effective than a chainsaw with sand that cuts.
Yes, and a guy and a helper like sprinkling sand on it while you're like sawing.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll my crew is really amazing, and my head guy Dakota Miles has been working with me for years, and knows this business. very well, and my designs, and I rely on him very much. And so I'm going to tell him tomorrow that we're going to have a workshop with, you know, the other guys. And so one of them just has to sit there with like a wire, and then the other one has to like sprinkle sand, and they just have to do that for 8 hours all day.
It can be
And
your
then
analog collection.
What's that?
Your analog collection.
That's the analog. Yeah. And so see this, and then this will be for my like installation that we'll put over at Site Santa Fe, which I'll take a video of that. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and then, okay, here's an idea. This is my idea, okay? So nobody else can steal it because I said it on Ann's show.
Yes.
So the one video will be those guys just doing that for 8 hours, just like nonstop, right? And then the other video will be like a total sped up video of us fabricating stuff with grinders and just like busting out like piece after piece after piece.
I love it.
You know, and in like fast motion, and then these guys in real time will be like with the art.
That's great. I think your Instagram stories are going to go through the roof.
Yeah. See, this is art in the raw.
Maybe,
we're creating
perhaps.
Art on the show, or ideas.
We're creating it. We should. Yeah, we should create art on your art on in your show. That's for sure. What fun.
Yes, so much fun. And look, we've got some
what fun
light on the maybe I should take us over to look at it closer. What do you guys think?
Oh, yes, let's see some reflection,
because it's kind of blown out a little bit with the
I like the idea that we got to see it during the day, and as we've talked, everything's changed. Now it's lit up. We get to see it completely differently.
It transitioned to a whole new piece.
Can you see it?
Yeah, but you're kind of, get out of your own shadow.
Yeah.
So yeah, for those of you that can't, it's hard to see, but there's waves like carved into the face of that.
Can you see it now? Now you can see the.
Oh, that's better.
Yeah, but we're seeing your shadow is what we're seeing.
In the bushes now. How's that?
Yeah, you can kind of see it. Yeah, it gets really washed out by the light.
Yeah, it's a little too much.
But
well, anyways, I'll post a picture. Anyway. I have to say, when I was working from home, I became a bird watcher because of this fountain. There's so many cool birds.
For sure.
Fountain every day. It's amazing. There's like
giant
ravens.
Yes, the birds love them.
There's giant ravens. There's like little finchy things. I think we both said in one, we both had birds leave pizza crusts on our fountains.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah. And
yeah, they bring them to soften them up, like get them out of the garbage, and they soften them up so they can eat them. Yeah, that was trippy.
Yeah, or I thought maybe they stopped
and then
water, and then they were like, I don't want this anymore. It's.
Yeah, maybe.
So they're really functional art as well.
They are, and that's kind of part
birds.
of
the birds are fun, and then and the sparrows will all fight over it, and then the like little finches will come and run the sparrows off, and then the big like collared doves will come and hang out on them. Yeah, it's good that birds don't have COVID, because they would be spreading it all to each other.
Putting it on my fountain and everything.
Putting bird COVID on my fountain.
Can't have that.
No, sirree. No, sirree. That's ridiculous.
Well, this has been super fun. I appreciate both of you for joining me. Does anybody have anything they want to say? Any last, it's getting dark here, and my lights blowing out the fountain.
good talking to you, Michael.
And
It was a pleasure, sir.
and you as well. It was nice to discuss art and hear about your process as a sculptor, because it's, while there are similarities, that's the differences I think that we learn from. So it's
Thank
been
you.
very
I
valuable
hope.
experience.
Yeah, I hope anyone listening to all this was inspired and entertained.
That's what we want. Inspired
Yes.
and entertained.
We didn't do any dance numbers, but it is the end of the day.
Maybe
There
next.
can be a part two.
Yes.
Part,
We could-
part two. That'll involve more alcohol, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well,
That can be arranged.
we can do that. I did promise on the first show that my dogs might learn to dance, which they did, I think, run through tonight,
They did.
barking at a bird,
Nice.
which I don't know. That's what they do. They're dogs.
Who's going to be on the next show?
Well, I've got a list of people, so I don't have a specific order. But one of our other mutual friends in Santa Fe, whose initials are TK, you know who she is. I'm gonna hit
Yes.
her up tomorrow because I think
Great.
she would be. She's diverse. She's interesting. I think it would be fun.
She's a genius.
She is a genius. So that's what I'm realizing. I know a lot of just really cool people, and there's
Yes,
some
indeed.
people that I don't know personally that I'm planning to reach out to for this show, but I'm kind of starting close to home right now. Like, already
Yeah.
so many cool people. How lucky am I? So we'll start
Totally.
there, and I
Totally
think we
lucky.
might do more mix-ups like this. Bring people back who want to come back and participate, and just keep the conversation going.
For
Yeah.
sure.
I think it's interesting and fun doing it this way, mixing it up, like you said.
Yeah, and my buddy Zach that was on last week, DJ Veda out of LA. If you watch that show, I totally butcher his last name in the intro. We laughed about it, so it's okay. But I know his DJ name, Veda, so it's okay. He was interested in coming back as well, so I think
Cool.
we'll bring in new guests. We'll mash it up a little bit. We'll just do whatever feels right. So fun.
It
And
feels right. Well, thank you,
yeah.
Ann Kelly. That was a blast.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you so much, and good luck with the rest of the project.
Thank
Or,
you.
the commission, not really a project. Commission project.
It's both of those things.
Yes. All of those things.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you both. And if you enjoyed this conversation, please remember to like, comment, subscribe so that you are in the loop for future conversations. And have a good night, everybody.
Ta.
Good night to both of you. Thanks.
Thank you.